Well, welcome one and all. Greetings and salutations. This is Series 7 Guru, aka Dean Tenney, coming to you from my studio, fabulous Las Vegas. We everything on the YouTube channel is free, and in the booking page, we have a couple things that are free. One is the office hour that we're doing presently. It's open to anybody who is paid either for a Kaplan class or for tutoring. So there is a caveat to that. The other thing that's free is the live stream overtime. We don't do that every Tuesday after our live stream, but we are doing it this Tuesday. So you can find what's available free on the booking page at deantinneytutoring.setmore.com. Once again, everything on the YouTube channel is free. Only few things on the booking page are free. This happens to be one of them. The way we handle free office hours is first come, first serve into the chat, whatever you'd like to talk about. What came up is we would like to discuss corporates and municipals. And so here we go. You are held accountable for three issuers of debt-denominated securities. So the one that isn't showing up here is government, the U.S. government. And, we used to colloquially refer to the Series 7 exam as the stockbroker's exam. And I really think if there were truth in labeling, we would not call it the stockbroker's exam. If there were truth in labeling, we should call it the bondbroker's exam. There are way more questions on bonds than there are a stock. And so let's talk about the two types of corporate debt. If you're just joining us for this free office hour, just put into the chat what you'd like to talk about. We do first come, first serve. Early birds get the worm. And so the first thing that somebody wanted to discuss is the corporate debt and municipal debt. And that's what we're doing presently. And there are two types of revenue bonds, or excuse me, of muni bonds. And so in this category of corporate debt, we should be able to identify secured debt, secured bonds, and unsecured bonds. It is very testable to know that secured bonds in liquidation are a senior security. In this category, we have mortgage bonds, which test question are secured by real estate. If you get these questions, it's going to be aim and shoot, point and click recognition, secured by real property. Now, what we mean by real property is not only the building, but the underlying land as well. I'm coming to you from Las Vegas, and a lot of our casinos are financed with mortgage bonds. It makes sense the the corporations that own the casinos don't want to issue equity because that would dilute them. And so they like to borrow money. If you're taking a 65-66, this idea of a balance sheet that has a lot of debt on it, has a lot of leverage on it, counterintuitive is to say they trade on equity, meaning they have a small amount of equity on the balance sheet and a large amount of debt. The other type of secured bond you're held accountable for are equipment trust certificates. Again, these are very popular with airlines. This is secured by major movable equipment. And the major and movable should have wheels on it. Sometimes we refer to that as rolling stock. And we have what are called collateral trust bonds. And these are secured or collateralized by securities that are in an escrow account. And, if the issuer doesn't pay us, either they distribute those securities to us or they sell off the securities to pay the bonds. So those are all secured bonds. And then we have unsecured bonds. We have debentures. We have subordinated debentures. So the debenture and subordinated debentures are just the issuer's promise to pay. And if their promise to pay has been good in the past, then they can probably borrow a lot of money and pay a lot of not so much interest on it. I kind of think the way I think a good way to think about these types of debt securities is your own personal situation. right? Some of us have secured debt in our lives where we pledged our house and the underlying real estate is collateral for the mortgage. We have a car loan where we've hypothecated or pledged the car as collateral for that car loan. And then we have maybe a Visa. That's just your promise to pay. And all of us probably have a Visa or a MasterCard or American Express. And depending on our credit quality, depends what that credit line is and how much interest we're going to pay on that. So this is the full faith and credit of the issuer. And subordinated would be, a subordinated debenture would be after my promise to pay, my promise to pay. And why would I be willing to subordinate my claim to the regular debenture holders? Because I get more interest. Now, in this category of debentures, we also have convertible debentures. And this is where the issuer says, we're going to borrow some money from you. And if you'd like, you can exchange this debt for our common stock. And that's going to be important because on the convertible debentures, there's going to be a conversion price. And you need to establish a conversion price, a conversion ratio. I don't know of any draw on Series 7 in which you're not going to have to do a parity calculation. And then we have income or adjustment bonds. And these are pretty counterintuitive as well, because you would think, oh, I need income. I should buy an income bond. Absolutely not. Income bonds only pay interest when and if earned. They test question trade flat. It's kind of like learning a foreign language. Trade flat is a term that means there is no calculation of accrued interest. And income or adjustment bonds trade flat, meaning no calculation of accrued interest. These are used in bankruptcies and restructurings, and they're not a retail product. They're not a retail product because, again, the one thing they don't do is pay income. I would definitely know that trade flat. What else trades flat besides income on adjustment bonds? Bonds in default trade flat. And remember, what no calculation of accrued interest is very testable. Is accrued interest is paid by the buyer of a bond to the seller of the bond. You know, if I sell you my bonds, let's say it's a J&J bond and I sell it to you today, Tuesday, March 5th, I say, listen, on July 1, you're getting a check and not all that money belongs to you because they were my bonds in January. They were my bonds in February. They're still my bonds tomorrow. They're not your bonds until Thursday the 7th. He said, well, Dean, when I get the check, I'll send you that provider share. I go, no. The Uniform Practice Code says you, the buyer, paying me, the seller, the dollar amount of the accrued interest. Remember, the Uniform Practice Code says there's 30-day months, 360-day years. And so say it's in default means we're not going to do this. You're going to say, well, Dean, how they're in default. And then zero coupon bonds trade flat. And again, what that means is no calculation of accrued interest. Okay, so that's an overview of the types of corporate debt we have. And in all this debt, we have two risks. We have what is called credit risk, and we have interest rate risk. Those are the two issues we have. And so we're going to rate corporations and municipalities, issuers. And the one we're concerned with is Standard & Poor's. And so if a bond is BBB, it is investment grade. And if a bond test question is less than investment grade, that means below BBB. And that is a testable kind of a line. And some fiduciaries are not allowed to buy bonds that are less than investment grade. So for example, Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson are AAA credit quality. AAA. So that's investment grade. What that means is you're less likely to lose money because of default than you are that interest rates go up and the bond goes down. And I kind of think of it as, you can't blame me if Microsoft goes bankrupt. I mean, that's not my fault. You know, if I sell you like a Ford Motor Credit, that's a C bond. So Ford Motor Credit has a C rating, and that's below investment grade. Now you do have that default risk. Now, the reason I bring that up is because as we move on to munis are considered to be test point better credit quality than corporations. Do muni bonds default? They do, but at a much, much lower rate than does corporations. Right. So that's the second safest form of credit. And it makes sense because the way they finance themselves are different than corporations. Corporations have to deliver their products and services at excess of raw material and labor, a profit. If they got to do that, at some point they're going to be, going out of business, right? Capitalism without failure is like religion without hell. Now, in the two types of muni bonds, I suggest that what you should do is take a sheet of paper and on one half write all the terms associated with general obligation bonds, and on the other side of the sheet, all the terms associated with revenue bonds. Because a big part of your exam is distinguishing between GOs and revenues. So we'll just do that here. Let's put GOs, and let's put over here revenues. I had somebody on the channel say, "Hey, Dean, you recommended that to, can you do that for me?" I said, "No, that's, your job. It's not my job to do your work. That's your job to do your work." And so as you're studying, you might want to do that. Now, this will give us an overview of these distinctions. But again, you need to do your own work here, right? So the biggest one is going to be taxes. Go over here. And over here is going to go user fees, right? I think a lot of people get hung up. They think there's a zillion types of muni bonds, and there's not. There's only two, GOs and revenues. Now, granted, there are subcategories. For example, in the revenue category, we got special tax bonds, we got moral obligation bonds, we got all kinds of subcategories, industrial development bonds. All right, so GO, we got taxes, revenues, we got user fees, and very testable. To issue a GO bond, we're going to need voter approval. And to issue a GO bond does not require voter approval because there is no stickiness to the taxpayers. No voter approval. The taxes to support local government, taxes are the price you pay for civilization. And for local government, that's going to be an ad valorem or property tax. States would primarily be income or sales taxes. Right. And here on the revenue side, we're going to have a feasibility study. I joke, I've never seen a feasibility study consultant that tells the issuer and the underwriters that what they're considering is not feasible. Over here on the GO side, we might have a double barrel bond. That would have two promises, a user fee. If the user fee is insufficient, then the full faith and credit. And again, that would require voter approval, right? Because there's stickiness again to the taxpayers. And, where people get hung up is moral obligation bond is not the same as a double barrel. This may or may not get you paid back, because it depends on what happens. Now, we could do other things here too. We could, if we went through this, we could talk about the bond council. We could talk about all kinds of things that would go with these various categories. But I do think that's a pretty good overview, a good 10, 15-minute broad overview of the two types of corporates and municipal debt. Do you have any other further questions on this before we move on to Claire? Claire is next in the queue with what she'd like to talk about. Anything in particular on this that you'd like me to add to? All right, so Claire, what would you like to talk about? Let's clear our board here. Clear our
Okay,
board. Yep.
I'm up. How are you today?
Good, good.